tell you a story. First of all, I'd like to make one correction in the introduction. I did not win the assembly race. I came within 329 votes of winning the assembly race in a district that only has 24% Republican registration. We'll come back to that. I want to tell you a story. So there's a man stranded on a desert island, and he's there decade after decade. And he builds tools, he learns to cut trees, he builds things, he's passing the time. 40 years goes by, he's rescued. The rescuers come aboard, they come onto the island and they see these buildings and they say, "You're here by yourself?" And he said, "Yes, I'm the only one on the island." They said, "Well, what have you done here?" He said, "Well, you know, I had time, so I built things. This is my library. This is my office. This is my workshop. And over here are these two beautiful buildings with decorative windows, identical buildings." And the rescuer says, "Well, what's this one?" He says, "That is my Republican club." He says, "Well, what's the other one?" That's the Republican club I wouldn't be caught dead in." You win elections with addition, not subtraction. It's really easy to focus on where we don't agree. It's really easy to have a family fight and stop talking to each other. It happens in families all over the world. It's got to stop happening in California to the Republicans. You win elections with addition, not subtraction. When I ran the assembly race, I talked about Proposition 13. I talked about the effort in Sacramento to raise taxes, to make it easier to pass bonds, to make it easier to add those taxes at the bottom of the property tax bill. And Democrats were completely on board with that. And that's how I got all those Democrats in a special election to cross over and vote for someone with an R, which every political consultant would say could not happen. Could not happen. And you couldn't do it on a low budget, and you couldn't do it with yard signs. But if the yard signs say protect Proposition 13, and people are in danger of losing their homes because they're worried about their taxes going up, yes, you can, to quote another president. Yes, you can win with very little money, with the right message, if you reach out with addition, not subtraction. I ran a second time. The first time in the special election with a lower turnout, I had 49.5% of the vote. I tried it in the regular cycle after that. Didn't do quite as well. I had 44% of the vote. Actually, I had 44% of the vote on election night, and then they counted the provisional ballots. It dropped to 43%. We know how that goes. But what I showed the editors at the Daily News in Los Angeles is how many people were interested in these issues, because it was a really issue-heavy campaign. I didn't have a consultant sending out pictures that said leadership with a picture in the park with a tree. We didn't do that. We talked about taxes. We talked about canceling the bullet train. We talked about things that made sense to people. And the votes were there. The votes were there. So I showed the editors the election numbers, and I said, these are points of view that should be in your paper. This is in your area. This is an underrepresented group of people. And they said, well, conservative. Try it. So we tried it. We tried a Sunday opinion column. It was instantly very popular. It wasn't a month later they came to me, they said, can you write 2 a week? And then they put me on the editorial board. And they said, could you help us with the editorial positions? And then Donald Trump won the presidency. And it's like, we don't know what Republicans think. You have to help us. Cap and trade came up. And I said in the editorial meeting, I said, well, I'm against it. Everybody else was for it. I'm against it. And I'm going to write against it. They said, okay. A few days goes by, they call me up. They said, we just want to make sure you're writing against it, right? I said, absolutely, I'm writing against it. Of course I am. Okay. Day goes by, they call again. You're writing against cap and trade. We just want to make sure you're writing against cap and trade, right? Because we want to have that point of view in the paper. Okay, yeah, I'm writing against it. So the paper comes out, and on the front page, usually I'm back in the page 5 area of the opinion section on Sundays, the front page of the opinion section, the cap and trade debate. It was a debate. In the Southern California News Group, it was a debate. It wasn't a debate in the LA Times. It wasn't a debate in the San Francisco Chronicle. There was only one side, and it was in favor of cap and trade, which, by the way, if you don't know, is a hidden tax on energy, which is supposed to save the climate and does nothing for the climate except cost you money. paper comes out, it's a debate on cap and trade. On the right, no, Susan Shelley. On the left, yes, Jerry Brown and the Chamber of Commerce. It's a good thing I punch above my weight, huh? So it was a very close vote. And what happened? 7 or 8 Republicans in the Assembly switched and pushed it over, and it passed. Subtraction. How do you beat subtraction? With addition. With addition. You can't always count on the people who are wearing the same shirt. You can't always count on your family members to be with you. You have to look at the issues. You have to talk to the voters. You have to say, where do we agree? It's so easy to know where we disagree. That's where all the energy is. We know we disagree. We disagree on a lot of things all the time with each other, with the Democrats. There's a lot of disagreement. That doesn't get us anywhere. What gets us somewhere is coalition building, concentrating on the issues where we agree. Look at the bullet train. Everybody's against the bullet train except Jerry Brown. We should be able to kill that thing. We have to work with the people we don't agree with on other issues on the bullet train. We have to work with people who can't pay their water bills to kill the Delta tunnels before we pay for 30 years of construction that will never give us a drop of water. I had a conference call meeting as a member of the editorial board. One of the great parts of the job is I get to talk to people who want to pitch their ideas to the editorial board, and sometimes they're politicians, and I get to do what everyone has always wanted to do, which is say, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? And we had some people call us from the Delta counties, and they were very concerned. They want an editorial against the tunnels. Well, I'm against the tunnels, but not for the same reason. They're against the tunnels, but that doesn't matter. We're against the tunnels. We can work together on that issue, and we can save all the people in the Southern California region that $5 a month that would be added to your water bill, and that's what they admit to, could be more. $5 a month on your water bill for something you'll never see. And even if it was built, would never guarantee you any extra water. There are ways to solve the water problems in California. One way is to stop turning off the water that we have built and paid for. This would be helpful. Do you know that the Delta, there are 2 water projects, one federal from the 1930s, one state from the 1960s. In the 1980s, they were pumping 8 million acre-feet from the Delta in those 2 projects, 8 million. Do you know what it is now because of lawsuits and environmental extremism? 4. It's on its way to 2. Right now it's 4. And what are they trying to do to you in California? They're trying to get you to pay for stormwater cleanup, groundwater pumping, all of this stuff that's incredibly expensive to build so that they can turn off the water from the Delta a little more every time. And even if they build the Delta tunnels to supposedly protect the Delta by moving the water from the river above it, under it, down south, what's to stop the biologists from going up there and finding some species of toad? This is an exclusive species of toad to this particular square foot, and it's endangered. Stop the pumping. What's to stop that from happening? Nothing is to stop that from happening. We could pay $17 billion plus interest to build those tunnels, and they could shut the water off again. How many times are we going to let this happen? How are we going to stop it? We're going to stop it by working with people who agree with us on those issues, even if there are mortal enemies on taxes or unions or something else. And speaking of unions, you've probably already heard about the Janus case and how the Supreme Court is going to probably level the playing field in California politics. And Donald Trump is doing something for us to level the playing field. Very interesting, this state and local tax deduction fight in the tax bill. Very interesting. They attacked the high tax states. And for the first time, some journalists that I actually work with realized that California is a high tax state. I'm not making this up. I got a call from a reporter in the San Jose area, same newspaper group, same company. And he said, we're doing a story on how come, like somebody's mother-in-law lives in Florida and their taxes are so much lower. Somebody's friend from college lives in Texas, the taxes are so much lower. Why are they so much higher in California? Now, never mind the answer, which we all know, of course. These people never thought of the question before. And the only reason they thought of it is because of this limitation of the state and local tax deduction that Donald Trump brilliantly put forward. Very controversial, not easy. Nothing he does is easy. And yet, he is changing the playing field in California. He's making people see that we're paying too much in this state. It's pretty clear that other states have roads and universities and public employees and schools. They have all these things. Better schools. They have all these things. And their taxes are lower. And why are their taxes lower? Because they're not owned and operated by public employee unions who are bankrupting the state with unaffordable, pardon the Democratic word, but unsustainable fiscal policies. Democrats never talk about fiscal sustainability, do they? They're very big on talking about climate sustainability, not so much on how we're going to come up with the money for everything they've promised. They're worried about the climate. They're worried about 1 degree 100 years from now, maybe. They're not very worried about $1 trillion of unfunded pension liability. They're not very worried about that. Well, they should be, because we're all paying for it right now. We're paying for it in the crowding out of services in city budgets across this state because the pensions are unaffordable. And the pensions are unaffordable because the contracts go up and up and up for public employees. And it gets sneakier and sneakier. In Los Angeles, the DWP workers got a new contract. It went through so fast, like through a goose, it went through. And another one in the back room just went through for the police officers. Now, I have nothing against the police officers. Certainly, if anybody's going to be paid too much money, it should be them. But the point is that these are backroom-style deals because of the support of the unions for the Democratic politicians, and the only way the Republicans are going to be able to beat that is to get in there to the voters and split away the middle-class taxpayers from the Democrats. If we take the middle class, if we are able to separate the public employee unions from the middle class, the center belongs to us. Addition, not subtraction. And I want you to have hope for California, because people never see historical change just before it happens. Nobody saw the fall of the Soviet Union the day before it happened. In 1994, when the Republicans took control of Congress, when Newt Gingrich did the contract with America, and they took control of Congress, Republicans in Washington hadn't held a gavel in their hand in 40 years. And the day before it happened, nobody saw it coming. And when Donald Trump won the election, nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw it coming, and nobody thought he could pass tax reform, and nobody thought he would recognize Jerusalem, and nobody thought that he would bring North Korea to the table instead of blowing up the world with these Twitter insults. They were wrong every time. So I want to leave you with the words of Babe Ruth. It is hard to beat a person who never gives up. Cancel the U-Haul, keep the faith. See you in November.